So I'm with Bryan Eisenberg from bryaneisenberg.com, that's easy. And you just delivered the keynote this morning at SES London 2010. And one of my favourite phrases that you come out with is you don't have a traffic problem, you have a conversion problem. And some recent articles that you've written on Clicksy, you talk about personas, and I wondered, like, how do personas work with SEO? Are you being effective if you're not using personas?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so many people miss the mark. When they think about SEO, they think about keywords and they think about content and putting pages together and tweaking code and stuff like that. When they realize, you know what, I've never met a search engine that has a credit card. So you can't optimize just for the search engine. The point of good SEO is to bring relevant customers to your website so that they can buy from you, right? That's the only purpose to have it, right? To sell more stuff, not to just bring more traffic, right? Because most people don't have a traffic problem, they've got a sales problem, they've got a conversion problem. And so just like a couple of weeks ago, I had met with a client and we were talking about it, and as we analyzed their site and we started looking at their analytics, we noticed that really they were very successful at targeting one, maybe a second one of their personas. They are in the PPC space, and they were targeting the expert PPC user. But the people who are brand new to the space, the people who may have worked in an agency and don't have that background, people who are in different types of agencies that may want to use their software, maybe they're an analytics company, whatever it is, they didn't target those personas. And so, first of all, their keyword set was much more limited, right, which is also disastrous, but they weren't speaking to the language that their customers needed. And so once you tie it in with personas, and you can start tying in your keyword strategy and then your content strategy to what those personas need, you become successful. And the persona is really nothing more than slicing and dicing your market segments, right? Trying to understand what questions they have, how they purchase, what their needs are, not just by demographics, because that's certainly one way, but by their psychographics, right? Do they prefer to make decisions quickly, slowly? Do they make them logically? Do they make them emotionally? By their expertise levels, right? Are they very knowledgeable about what you're selling, or do they know very little about your selling? And once we're able to do that, define the keywords, and then plan the content all the way to the right goal for them, because for some of them the goal is, yeah, get me a demo, sign me up. The other ones are, send me more information, right? Because they're much earlier in the buying process. And so you need to make sure you prioritize all the keywords based on the personas, based on where they are in the buying cycle, and then you start getting much better results.
Right, and I mean, this is a typical problem businesses have. You know, they optimize their websites for the search terms that they use internally, but their customers don't use these terms. One objection that I often get is, how do we know what kind of keyword one persona uses over another? And then, do we need to put in like multiple conversion points for these different personas on the same page?
That's a great point. So one of the things is, different personas will be attracted to different trigger words, keywords, right? And so on a particular page, you may have something related to, your analysis process, which may appeal to your methodical persona, but your, extremely, positive ROI results speak to your more competitive persona. So the phrase you use will match what the goal is of the persona. So you can use different words for them as you get to know them. The other thing that I often see is one of the big challenges organizations have is, they want to use the words that they want to use and not the words of the customer. And like I showed in today's keynote, when you start leveraging voice of customer and social commerce, you increase conversions, you increase search results, because it's the natural language that people are using. The problem is, and I'm sure you've read the Clue Train Manifesto, right? And we talk about markets of conversations, and people are getting past that, phoniness of the marketing language that used to be. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that most marketers have is, we like to speak in marketese, and the customers look at it like, you're speaking Chinese to me today. Talk to me like a real person. And one of my favorite books that I always recommend for people who want to get better at delivering their message, have you read Chip and Dan Heath's Made to Stick?
Yeah.
It's a great formula. Their success formula is a great formula on how to actually go ahead and break down your content into a process that makes it suitable and palatable for your customers. And they're just coming out with another book that just got released yesterday called Switch, which I'm just finishing the preview copy. And it's magnificent because it's some of the same concept, which is how do you get people to switch their behaviors? And of course, that's something you definitely want to do when we're dealing with sales. So some good triggers in there and some things to learn.
Interesting. One of my favorite books actually is Small Pieces Loosely Joined, and the way that documents have kind of fundamentally changed nature. And we've got, like, you know, personas and the kind of fragmentation of a normal document must go together kind of absolutely hand in hand.
Well, what it is, you know, any document, any object has features related to it. It's what it's about. It has meta information, right? If you think about it from that perspective. The problem is that people are never interested in the meta information. It's almost irrelevant. It doesn't really give them enough context that from their point of view. The advantage to using something like personas in this is that you can take what that meta information is, what that piece of content is, and say, okay, what are the benefits in the eyes of that persona of that content, and then frame it to them in that way. And once you do that, you know, a microphone, a video camera has the same qualities to everybody, right? It's built with a certain set of features. But what you like about a particular video camera and what I do may be completely different. You may like it for its weight, but I like it because of the sharpness of the pictures. And that's okay. You just need to be able to understand who you're speaking to and communicate it effectively. Offline, we can kind of start asking the questions. Online, we find out by the queries they use in search and by the links they click on our website.
Interesting. This also leads me to wonder, universal search result pages. Now we've got news in there, blogs, video, social circle results, map one boxes, all that stuff. Do different personas use those one same search result in a different way?
They absolutely do, and I think it's interesting to see some of the changes. I mean, you know, yeah, it's looking a little bit NASCAR-ish right now with, you know, all different pieces and what's going where, and it's interesting to see people who are not as familiar with search looking at search results today compared to even just a few months ago. Like, what's this thing moving along here? I'm not, you know, with all the Twitter feed stuff. Yeah, no, people interact with different pieces. There are some people who'll never click on, you know, a pay-per-click link. We know that. I mean, we've seen that beforehand. You know, spontaneous people, they tend to prefer more of the interactive stuff, so they're definitely attracted to the images and to the videos. And so why not give them exactly the way they want to have it? And it's one of the reasons why when you're thinking about optimization, you need to think of your assets, that same thing, from the benefit of the consumer. What's the format they're going to prefer to have it? You know, maybe something that you do as an online video demo, the competitive will never sit through it. So maybe what you want to do is just prepare it as a PowerPoint that's very well optimized, and most people don't think about those. Or, you know, you take your white paper and you make sure it's very well optimized as well. And so you have to think about all these digital assets, right, and think about them from the point of view of the persona and deliver to them in the format that works best for them, right? So not only in the media, but also in terms of the language that also benefits them.
Fascinating stuff. I mean, what it's making me think is a bit like what you're seeing now with app stores, for instance, is that one app is the same content will be advertised right next to each other on Android, iPhone, BlackBerry, and all that side by side. And from what you're saying, I'm getting that, yeah, actually we need to be designing for personas side by side, putting it all into the same page.
Exactly, and not every page, but certainly a lot of them have a lot of overlap, and so that's what you need to plan for. Because what happens is, you know, if I'm presenting you a sales pitch or a catalog, it's a linear process I go through, right? I flip page to page. I mean, I can go from, you know, page 3 to page 80. That doesn't really matter, but it's still fairly a linear process. Online, the customer's in control of that experience. So they click and they maneuver the way they want to. And because search has done such a great job at indexing pages no matter where they are, right? It used to be that online was a lot more linear, right? You'd start off at the home page. From the home page, you'd go to a category page. From a category page, you go to a product page. Today, I go ahead and I do a search, and it brings me deep down into a website, and it takes me in the path that I want to take it. And you've got to deliver exactly what the customer's looking for. And that's hard work.
Yeah. And also, rich data, we're now starting to see, you know, metadata for metadata. That's going to change the search interface fundamentally. What's it going to do?
I think we're still looking at very primitive search results. I mean, I think the ultimate vision where I see search is, I actually wrote about this for an SES magazine a few years ago, and I talk about how, you know, you think about your DVRs today, And you think about this set-top box, the computer is becoming irrelevant, right? We know with smartphones, you can have everything going with you. And I'm imagining that at some point, this just interacts with the central device in your house. It feeds it back data, and without even thinking about it, because of the algorithms, because of the personalization, because of all that, it's going to know my calendar, say, hey, you know what, you're going to London next week. I know your food preferences. Here are some of the best restaurants and it's delivering for you. You're not actively searching, but it's already bringing those things to you, and it's going to change the way. So, I'll go to my calendar and say, okay, go for lunch, and all of a sudden, in my calendar will be the search results. Right, I'm using Google Calendar. And so you start thinking about the potentials of all these different pieces coming together. It's not going to be the 10 blue links anymore. It's not even close to the 10 blue links anymore.
Yeah, right. And last question. I mean, one thing that is interesting as well about the evolution of the web and changing of behaviours is, we started off all as people who read content, then we became creators of content. Now we're in total new learning styles of video versus audio and all these things. And I know that movement and kinesthetic is also meant to be a learning style just for human beings. My question is about how much effort do companies need to start making into these kind of just human behavior stuff beyond technology?
It's interesting because I presented this last week at a social media conference for small businesses. And if you read Waiting for Your Cat to Bark, I talked briefly about the history of commerce, connectivity, and marketing. And it shows that in every evolution that ever existed, what happens is there are evolutions in technology, in finance, or communications that changes the nature of marketing and commerce. And what's happened is every single one of those evolutions, depending on your religious persuasion, the first sale could have been an apple, right? All the way to, modern technology of buying things on, your cell phone. Each one of those has meant to reduce the friction for the customer. But when you reduce friction, just basic law of physics, in one place, friction has to show up somewhere else. And guess where that friction has to go? To the person who wants to sell, to the vendor. And so that vendor now needs to do a lot more work because we're basically living in a world where the customer is frictionless from when they want to buy. So you've really got to focus a lot of energy into understanding where things are going, how things are changing, and how you're going to adapt. And it was one of the things I ended up my presentation with today, which is, the one constant in life is change, and change is happening faster today than ever before. And I mean, I look at it through the eyes of my kids. I have an 8-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 10-month-old, and I look at where technology was when my daughter was first born, where my last son is born. I'm like, it's unbelievable how much their lives have changed. And I've been online since 1982 when I started my first bulletin board system. And it was a slow chug. And now it's just every week it seems to be a new evolution going on. If companies can't keep up with that pace of change, if they can't learn how to execute at that pace, they're going to fall far behind. And I think the one thing, if I can get across to anybody, is if they can start learning how to be lean and mean and just quickly test and learn how to fail quickly, as Avinash likes to say, you cannot become successful in the future.
So, be more daring.
Be more daring, be more active. Do things every day.
Brilliant, Bryan, thanks very much.
You're welcome.